So I would like to call this meeting to order. We're privileged to meet on the Stalo unceded traditional territory of Chilliwack, Pulault, and Samath. With this, we acknowledge the Indigenous peoples' unique relationship to the land and our commitment to ongoing reconciliation. The board also acknowledges the marginalization that many members of our community have experienced, whether as a result of race, sexual orientation and gender identity, or other personal circumstances. The board is committed to providing a working and learning environment that recognizes the inherent dignity of all persons, that is inclusive of all, and that treats everyone with respect. Okay. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Trustee Reed, seconded by Trustee Swanky. All right. Does anyone have any additions to the agenda? Trustee Swanky.
Thank you. I just wanted to move a change to the order of business and request that action item 4.2 be moved to the bottom of our action items.
Does anybody object to that change? Oh, Trustee Moss?
Well, I would just like to hear a rationale for that.
Certainly. Trustee Swanky?
Certainly, if I may, the proposed bylaw 5 discussion is just a little bit more fulsome. I thought it might be beneficial to move through some of the other pieces of business, both to ensure that we get it completed this evening and also to ensure that staff that are present to support those discussions have the opportunity to speak into it before maybe they have to excuse themselves or deal with any other matters.
Trustee Swanky, I'm sort of not, I honestly would prefer to do that one early because when I'm fresh and I think it's maybe more complicated than some of the other discussions, but you're welcome to move that change. And then if you get a seconder, we can vote on that change. That would be fine.
Certainly, I believe I made it presented as a motion. I would move the change.
Certainly. Would anyone like to second Trustee Swanky's motion to change the order of business? Trustee Westerby would second that. All right, I believe Trustee Swanky, you articulated why you want to change it. I articulated why I would prefer not to, so I don't know if anyone has anything else they'd like to say about that. Put up your digital hand if you do. All right, not see, oh, Trustee Westerby.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that, it's important that we spend our time doing the work that is before us, and where we spend our time is showing the importance of the board. So that's why it's good to move that to the later portion so we can discuss that as Trustee Swanky pointed out.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of moving action item 4.1 to the bottom of the action items?
Apologies, it's 4.2.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Anyone, all those in favor of moving action item 4.2 to the bottom of the action items? Trustee Swanky is in favor. Trustee Westerby is in favor. All right, opposed? Sorry, I saw myself, Trustee Bondar, Trustee Reed. Oh, and Trustee Moss.
Trustee Procey, are you voting?
Abstain.
Okay. So the motion fails. So we're going to keep the order of business the way it is. That was 4-2 vote opposed. So, all right. So that being said, all those in favor of approving the agenda now as originally presented? That is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Oh, sorry, trustees. Trustee Swanky, you still voted for that, correct? Yes, okay. All right, so that is approved and carried. All right, now can I get a motion for approval of the minutes, please? Trustee Westerby. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Swanky, thank you. Any additions or errors, omissions with the minutes? Not seeing any. All those in favor of approving the minutes as circulated? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Motion carries. All right, we're moving on to information items. 2.1 Budget Advisory Committee minutes. I believe that is just actually the minutes are in the package. So we move on to, I believe, 2.2, which is Budget Advisory Committee report, which will be Trustee Swanky.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, very little to say, and then I'll put it over to the Secretary Treasurer, if I may. The committee met on October 26th. Those minutes are before you, as noted. Several new members, including new student reps, new representation from our partner groups, and a newly appointed community member. So a warm welcome to everyone. And with that, with the, pardon me, the permission of the Chair, I'd ask that the Secretary Treasurer present the documents.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah. So I'm going to give a very, very abridged version. We did have a couple of hour meeting talking about these items. My daughter starts playing right now. I can't believe it. So I'm going to give you 3 high points from the quarterly financial report. The first one is that the enrollment is up. So you'll see that while we've held provincial operating revenue the same, at 170, that, you know, we're sort of tracking on budget, we expect that to go up. So that's an item that's not presented there that we spoke to. What you can see because of that increased enrollment is increases in staffing, particularly in the areas of teachers and education assistants. And it's sort of notable that they're both moving in the same direction, you know, to about the same degree. And that higher than budgeted staffing level is just a reflection of we needed more staff because we had increased enrollment. And the third sort of very notable thing is you'll notice that principals and vice principals and other professionals are quite a bit below budget at the moment. And that's because we had not had any salary changes for those 2 groups approved by the province by the time of, you know, the September payroll. That was approved in October, and that will flow through in the next quarterly report. I think they're kind of the high points. You know, we've had some supplies and services that are a little over budget, but as you can see, when that happens, it doesn't move the needle a terrific amount. So I'll hold that for a later date. And you know, given there's a report and there's an analysis attached to that, I'll open the floor and see if there's any more questions to a higher level of detail.
Trustee Bondar, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just noticing in the written form of the quarterly report that there was a substantially different number, you know, of incoming students, and consequently the teachers. Did you get a feel for, you know, where that extra bump was coming from, or is this just basically an artifact of new developments? Or yeah, it just struck me as quite a big difference this year.
I'm wondering whether the superintendent wanted to speak to that.
I can. There are many considerations for that. Generally, we have a large number that come through the Fraser Valley and they leave at the end of the month for this reason. And normally, our projection has been around 1.5 to 2.5%. It was an anomaly this year, and we're going to start to look at some of the factors around who's actually stayed and not traveled further north. Thank you.
Trustee Swanky?
Thank you, Chair. If I may, just one question through the chair to staff. I wanted to just see clarity. There's an approximately 35% drop in revenues under rentals and leases. I was just hoping for clarity on if this is related to the CYHC rent relief directed by the board in their motion to May 9th.
Yeah, and I think if I'm correct, you asked that very same question at the meeting. Yes, it is at least partially due, but we are seeing some decline in rentals.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions.
Oh yeah, I just have one quick follow-up.
Oh, sorry, Trustee Bondar, there was a thing in front of your hand.
Oh yeah,
On my
sorry,
screen.
don't worry. I just wondered about the transportation supplies. That was 45,000 in the report, and I just hadn't seen the supplies before. Is that just increases in gas cost?
That might be something we need to get back to you on. It's sort of a smaller level than I came prepared with.
No
materials.
worries, no sweat. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Okay, not seeing any further hands. We're now on to trustee written reports, which are in the package for anyone who wants to check those out. Now we're on to 2.4, which is policy analysis update. The superintendent.
Thank you, Board Chair. You have the report in front of you. I'll try and summarize the main points. Basically, we started this project back in 2020. January 14th, if trustees recall, we had our first meeting, a planning meeting in the month of March, and that's when COVID set the stage and we had to suspend a policy analysis manual. Extensive work. Before I start, I really want to be able to acknowledge the work of the previous Board of Education and this Board of Education. First of all, for approving the policy work and for engaging in a difficult, long, it's cumbersome conversation, especially the first part. We had lots of conversations on Zoom and working on policies through Zoom. It's never easy by itself. So I really want to acknowledge the work done by this Board of Education. This has been a bold step for the school district, mainly because of the fact that we've had multiple policies and no fault of anyone, but we really haven't been focused on the policies as a whole as a school district. And I think what this has done is allowed the Board of Education to focus on some key policies and to make sure that then staff are held accountable for the implementation of those policies, as well as making sure that we have admin procedures that go along with that particular piece. In the analysis, really quickly, just a quick summary. I'm just going to focus only on the policies. We had 145 policies in the existing manual. Some are duplicates, again, by no fault of anyone, due to multiple people being involved in the policy adoption process or adding new policies by itself. Today is the last set of policies for your consideration. We may actually have another meeting just to do some cleanup, and I'll talk a bit about those particular pieces. In total, we would have reaffirmed 75 policies. Out of the 75, there are 2 new policies for consideration. One is privacy and the other one is childcare, and those were required. The childcare policy was required for consideration. We have 70 policies that are repealed. There's information there that talks about amalgamation, and again, part of that is being able to ensure that we follow through. The key piece around this was that when we first started on the policy manual analysis, the idea was to be able to look at providing greater clarity, looking at policies that are no longer current, don't have any currency, and also looking at admin procedures that are relevant to the existing policy process by itself. But the key thing was around the fact that if there were going to be any information that the policies already had that were embedded in the School Act regulations and orders in council or School Act ministerial orders, as well as ministry policy, the key was to be able to remove them from the policy booklet and then continue to look at the ministry policy as they continue to update the policies. Because in the past, if you had ministry directions within a policy, that was never updated by us as a consequence. So to try and make it really concise and really make sure the policy manual comes alive. And the last piece for consideration would be is that, and this is just for your interest information, the policy booklet is the policy manual review is now complete. The plan moving forward is for the Board of Education to review all of the governance policies during its tenure, while staff continue to review the administrative procedures and look at gaps in the system when it comes to admin procedures. That's going to be our responsibility. And again, trustees, you also may identify gaps in the system and direct the school superintendent to look at admin procedures if there are any gaps, especially around our conversation when we have learning sessions. The work for the Education Policy Advisory Committee is now complete for now, unless we have new policy ideas that fall under the scope of EPAC moving ahead. As I said, there'll be a few housekeeping items to deal with. So for example, policy 161, EPAC, we really have to go back and change the policy manual numbers because it still refers to the old policy manual. It says 500 and the 600 section. There are a couple of pieces like that within that. I'll bring those policies for consideration for the month of December. That was my report. Are there any questions, trustees?
Trustee Swanky.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, through to the superintendent. I'm just wondering, you mentioned that this is the conclusion we're reaching of the policy manual review process. At what point will the old policy manual be removed from the website? And I'm just, it's pretty messy when you're trying to dig through those documents. And I'm just wondering when I as a member can have clarity going through it, and when maybe individuals in the public can have that same clarity. Also, I suppose the alignment between policy and administrative regulation, because I know that there's a migration going on between the old numbering and the new numbering.
Thank you. That's a great question. So my reflection will be is that we're still working through some existing admin regulations that are being converted to admin policies, and I'm going to flash a document up in a second. So this really has, I'm just going to just allow me to do this as I'm talking. The key piece around this is, first of all, if you go to a policy, if you go to a website, the goal will be to have this information up till the end of this particular school year. And it serves two purposes. One is that right now, if you go to a public website under policy, you have existing policies as well as the previous policy booklet for consideration, so people can actually go and see what was changed and when that was crossed out. As well as if you go down to the end of the policy manual booklet, you can actually find a link that talks about the whole policy manual as a PDF document, as well as admin procedures. The next big work that we have to do is to be able to look at, do a barrier scan to the accessibility lens at all of our existing policy work that's been completed up till now. That framework probably will be developed by the start of the new calendar year, and I'm assuming that'll go on till the month of March or so as a scan piece by itself. We would like to be able to finish the work on our admin procedures, regulations to procedures. We still have some left by itself. And so if I could just quickly go and so the idea would be, I would like to be able to keep that up and running until the end of this coming school year. And I want to make sure that the public has a very good understanding of the policy manual that we've completed so far. So this is a document. And by the way, Lisa Champion, thank you. She's done all the legwork behind the scenes. So I need to acknowledge Lisa for her due diligence in keeping all this work. We're doing a bit of a mini presentation from the administrators on Thursday. This is, I'll share this document with the trustees this weekend in my weekend update. This will cover all the things that have been done, as well as what is left at the end when it comes to admin regulations. So trustees, you have a good notion of what's still left to do. I want to keep the website up and running till the end of the school year, so we have clarity. And then perhaps, and that clarity, and once that's complete, then we're going to take away the old policy manual and have the new one with references, so people are really clear as to what the new policies relate to with the new admin procedures. I hope that helps answer your question.
All right, thank you, Superintendent. I'm not seeing any other hands up. So, oh, sorry, I do. Suddenly there's hands up. Hold on one second. I'm just going to check which one of you had your hand up first. Trustee Westerby and then Trustee Moss.
Thank you. Yeah, through the chair to the superintendent. I presume, although we don't know yet, that the Accessible BC Act will have some effect on the policy reviews, depending on what comes from the committees and so forth.
That is correct. And I will provide that information to the Board of Education once I find that out. Thank you.
Trustee Moss, did you still have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you. So, Superintendent, you said you were going to leave all this stuff up until the end of the school year, so that's great. So if people are looking for policies that we've previously had and no longer have, and there is simply an admin regulation instead of the policy, is there a means to an end for parents to be able to, or people to be able to locate what they're doing? So in leaving up the old and the new, that will be a vehicle for them to be able to find. So I'll just give you an example. So the policy for alternate delivery for health and sex education, the policy is no longer there. Only an admin reg is left. How would people be able to know and how to access that?
If I'm correct, Trustee Mars, there'll be clarity on the website regarding the notion of what the admin procedure is. By name, they should know exactly what the content is. Your question is more around was there an existing policy? And where would they find that information? Am I correct? So let me take that
Yes.
question away, Trustee Mas. It's possible that we could have the previous policy manual in some notion on our website to be linked. It's best that we allow people to understand the transition pieces and then they rely upon the new policy manual. But your question was more on if somebody had a question regarding a previous policy that now has been deleted, where would they find that information? I can probably find some way of making sure I can surface that information. for
Okay,
public
that would
consideration.
that would be great. When I attended the foundation or the bursaries and scholarship committee, we were discussing Ukraine and refugees and how we dealt with those students, and they responded, "Oh, we have a great policy on that." And I thought, "Oh, no, we don't." And so it's only an admin reg, so the board doesn't actually speak to that. So that's the kind of thing that I would like to see, post and so that people know where to find it when they're looking.
Thank you. Just to provide some clarity, the admin procedure that's been redone has a lot of information. The policy just gave a broad statement. If I'm correct, I think people are looking for the nuts and bolts around. And you're looking at something like a refugee question. Where would they find the information? That will be embedded in the admin procedure. And our whole intent was to be able to have that in one place. But again, just to answer your question, I'll find some way of making sure that we have some connection to the old documentation for the next bit of time for people to go through and get acquainted to what was there before and what is there now. Does that help?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Just to follow up, Superintendent, on the website currently, aren't the admin regs sort of they're on the same page as the policies, aren't they? Like, so even like they're under the heading for, student services or whatever. I thought that was done the last time I looked at the website. Sorry.
They're on a different page. So example, if I go to the bottom of the policy page, this is the policy page.
Okay.
If I go to the bottom, I can just flip down to the admin procedure regulation manual. It
Oh,
does
okay.
the same thing like the policies. And then again, here, if you go through, it'll give you ones that have been deleted. So it is there but I think at the end of this coming school year, I'm gonna move all the stuff that was deleted to some sort of PDF documentation for some further clarity.
But there is a link right on the policy manual to the admin procedures. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Okay, I don't see any further hands up, so we will move on to BCSTA report. That's Trustee Reed.
Yes, thank you. So I do have my report in the package, but I'll highlight a couple of things for you. Provincial Council was October 20th to 21st. It was in Vancouver. So the Legislative Committee didn't approve any items to come to Provincial Council, but 3 emergent motions were brought forward. They were voted on and passed. That was motions for support for youth mental health, pay equity supplement, advocacy, and request for the minister's support, a letter from the Minister of Education in support of equity, diversity, and inclusion. The provincial council synopsis is available in our BCSTA email via link. So if you go back in your email and look it up, you can grab the synopsis and the meeting minutes and such. A reminder that Academy is November 23rd to 25th in Vancouver. The theme is guiding a healing journey. I'm not sure where to put the emphasis there. A reminder that our branch engagement dates are November 9th, November 24th, January 27th, and January 29th. Trustee Swanky has sent out a lot of details along with those. The reminder to register was for yesterday, so hopefully you've all registered for the November 9th motion writing workshop. Some other important dates are listed in the report for motions for the different provincial councils and AGM, and I also included a couple of dates for education opportunities for BCSCA resources. Any questions?
Trustee Bondar.
Yeah, I had a question. You mentioned that there's going to be a learning series date in January, late January at the curling club. Do we have a topic on that, or is the topic generated based on a previous meeting?
There is a topic available for that. It is actually, the details are in our email. I think Trustee Swanky is the one leading that up. So sorry, I don't have the details directly in front of me. But I can locate them and make sure that we all have them.
Cool, thank you.
Apologies, point of privilege, Chair, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you for letting me know. I don't see any further questions. So we are moving on to public participation. So I'm going to read out norms for public participation on Zoom. The public board meeting is the formally designated means of transacting board business. 2 public participation periods are provided as a means for ensuring that community members who are present in the audience have an opportunity to provide comments and or ask questions about business or issues pertaining to the board agenda. There are 2 public participation periods with an allotted time of 15 minutes each. Please submit your question via the Zoom webinar app, including your full name, email address in relation to the district and which agenda item you're writing about. Matters currently under negotiation or litigation are related to personnel or student circumstances, including names or specific classrooms, are not permitted and will not be addressed in the public participation periods. When requested questions are directed to the board, actions or answers to many questions may be deferred pending board consideration. The chair may indicate another means of response if question cannot be answered at the time, for example, operational items. Community members who have other comments or questions are encouraged to contact trustees or the superintendent via email, board@sd33.bc.ca, if you want to send that email. The chair will advise writers to submit questions if the content of the questions are considered to be discourteous or not aligned with the agenda. All right. So all that being said, let's see if there's any questions. Okay, so I'm going to read out the first question, which is by Reed Clark from the CTA. Since EPAC is not active, is there an avenue for partners to bring ideas of future policies to the board or EPAC? So there wouldn't be a way, superintendent, if you can maybe help me with this one, there wouldn't be a way to directly bring it to EPAC if EPAC isn't sitting, but according to our policy on policy creation, I believe anyone in the community can propose a policy. So you could email the board and say, I think that this needs to be a policy, and then a trustee may or may not take that up and make it as a motion, depending on the situation. Then it would be either actually just a policy that the board could make, or it might be one that was then referred to EPAC. So is that correct, Superintendent? Let me make sure I didn't say anything wrong there.
That is correct. They'll make a recommendation to the Board of Education. The board may request further information from the school superintendent and staff during a learning session, and then make the recommendation at the public board meeting. That's correct.
Yeah. So just to clarify, like, doesn't automatically get made into a motion, depending if there's no trustee that liked your idea, it wouldn't necessarily, but it's definitely, you can propose at any time, and that's totally okay and encouraged, actually, to let us know what you think. Okay, and there's another question. Okay. We've got a question from Daryl Ferguson, former trustee. The board represents the community, makes decisions with the benefit of the whole district in mind, and is accountable to the community. According to policy 120.2, the board will operate in an open and transparent manner, and debate on agenda items will be conducted within board meetings. How does this board demonstrate transparency and accountability to the public when it is planning to further restrict public access to the public board meetings? How does this encourage public involvement in public board meetings and generate confidence in the mind of the public that this board is open to input and is not just acting in a totalitarian manner with an ideological agenda? Okay, so I'm just going to point out that the proposed bylaw change is a proposed bylaw change. All trustees will have an opportunity to speak to that. So it has not been passed. I think the Secretary Treasurer will have explain why the proposal is on the floor for trustees tonight, and I expect to have fulsome debate as a board on the proposed change. I can't speak, we haven't had a chance to, as a board, to formulate a response to this question, so I'll just say that I think that the having to write a question doesn't necessarily stop you from being able to voice your opinion, just as we just saw in those questions. So, but I can't say what the board will decide because we haven't voted on that or discussed the matter yet. So trustees can also keep that in mind, the question, when we go to debate that part. So the next question I'm actually not going to read out loud because I don't feel that it is appropriate at all to mock our land acknowledgement. And so I will not read that aloud. Any trustee who has a problem with that can talk to me about it later, but I will not read that out loud. Thank you. Yeah, all trustees can see what the question was. All right, any other questions?
Now I think.
Okay, I'm just going to let everyone know we've only been talking for half an hour, so I think we can keep going for now, but I am keeping the clock in mind. If at any point a trustee's like, I need a break now, just let me know. My intention is to maybe wait till the hour mark and see how we're feeling, and I'll keep checking in. I think we can go for now unless anyone's like, oh, I was hoping for a break after public participation. Okay, I don't see any flailing hands, so that's okay. All right, so we are moving on to action items. 4.1, 2024-2027 draft 3-year school calendar. I am just going to point out in advance that this is the approval of the process for the local school calendar consultation process. So as some of you are aware, in the past I've recused myself when we're actually approving the calendar. This is approving the process, not in conflict for that, just for clarity as we go into this. But superintendent.
Thank you, Board Chair, and that's great clarity. So this is around approving the outline feedback process for the 3-year calendar. So first of all, the Chilliwack School District and the Chilliwack Teachers Association have agreed on a 3-year calendar framework. I want to thank the table officers for looking at a 3-year calendar. I think it's going to be very constructive. It's going to be able to have families plan in advance. As per section 87.01 of the School Act and the School Calendar Regulation, the board must make the proposed calendar available to parents of students and representatives of the employees of the Board of Education for feedback at least 1 month prior to submission. That is, the submission date is actually March 31st. So we actually started this process way early to garner feedback. Just like last year, it's fundamentally important that we get a very transparent process. It's actually, I think if I can go back and look, the calendar is being populated right now on a public website, but I provided the same outlines last year. The survey is going to be posted on our district website from November 8th to November 27th. We've actually started that today, so trustees can see that. The online survey link will be emailed to all parents, guardians, and caregivers tomorrow. Information regarding survey will be advertised in the Progress newspaper. Again, we talked about and then also as well as that, we're going to be emailing the survey out to all of the sites, and they'll be emailing that to share with their respective parents, guardians, and caregivers. Also, plus through the school newsletter. So it's sort of a 2-pronged process. We're going to send out information to all parents, and schools will also do the same thing. So every single parent has the information ready. We are also looking from an accessibility lens. We are going to be looking at making sure the information on our public website is very clear, and also having copies of the survey being made available at the board office for parents, guardians, and caregivers who prefer to provide feedback on a paper-based methodology. So really quickly, all 3 school years have a 2-week spring break, 1 administration day. It's no different from this particular year. 6 professional days, including a school-based professional day. One of the things that are super important, this used to be in the calendar regulation, they've changed that. But as we all know that we spent a whole day on October 6th looking at our journey on truth and reconciliation. So one of the 5 remaining professional days, excluding professional days, they're going to be looking at cumulative professional activities during the school year. That'll amount to 1 day that'll be focused on enhancing Indigenous student achievement and integrating Indigenous worldviews and perspectives into the learning environment. This reflects our commitment in the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Action Plan, including 4.1, increase of achievement for Indigenous students, and 4.4, equitable access to education in the Chilliwack School District. 3 days will be allocated for student assessment evaluation and parent-teacher consultation. And then these will support student assessment evaluation conversations. And then there'll be a school-based professional day scheduled yearly. We are going to look at having one common day for the whole school district in preparation for future years in consideration when we want to bring the whole district back together. So trustees, the motion is in front of you. Thank you.
Point of privilege, Chair, you're muted.
Apologize. I keep hitting it and it's not. Sorry. Okay, trustees, can I get someone to make the motion? Trustee Bondar, thank you.
I will move that the Board of Education approve the outlined feedback process for the 2024 to 2027 3-year local school calendar for employees, parents, guardians, and caregivers.
Do I have a seconder? Trustee Westerby. Trustee Bondar, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I appreciate the fulsome comments by our superintendent. The plan makes a lot of sense to me, and I like the idea of possibly in future having additional Pro-D days where the entire district comes together. That was an extremely powerful day, and I love that you're building the potential to do that again for different topics in future years. Yeah, so thank you. Looks great to me.
All right, does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Oh, Trustee Moss.
Thank you. So I'm assuming that this 3-year calendar has been run by the teachers union, as we need to sort things out as their contract only allows for 1 week. So has this been run by the union?
That is correct. We've been in conversation with the CTA table officers. We've come to a common resolution.
Thank you.
All right, just double checking, not seeing any further hands. All those in favor that the Board of Education approve the outlined feedback process for the 2024-2027 3-year local school calendar for employees, parents, guardians, and caregivers. All those in favor, keep your hands up till I say. All right, thank you. That is unanimous, trustees. Motion carries. All right. So we're on to 4.2, bylaw 5, board meeting procedures revised. Secretary Treasurer. Oh, Trustee Moss, do you have something?
Yes, I do. I'd actually like to move that we refer this policy to a committee of the whole so that the board can have a fulsome conversation about it and take all the time that it needs. Since public participation is entirely in the board's purview, as it is our communication with the community.
Do we have a seconder? Sorry, who's talking?
That was me. I was just confirming it was a resolution.
Right.
Okay.
So I moved that so my motion is that we refer this policy to a committee of the whole.
Is there a second for that?
Just a point of privilege, I want to clarify what committee of a whole is.
It's a
It
committee.
means that it would be all the trustees, basically. But it would be out of the public eye. Is there a seconder for that?
Just
Trustee
if I may,
Westerby?
a point of order, I suppose. I suppose it's a point of privilege. I'm wondering if we can hear from the Secretary Treasurer so they can outline the considerations before the board, as that would help inform the board's ability to consider the request for referral to a committee of the whole. So
Yeah,
it's more about the information on the table in order for this motion to be in order.
can I just, I'm not saying no to that. Can I just say for 1 second, what I was going to say if we were debating this referral was I was going to encourage trustees to vote against it at this point, and that perhaps refer it after we have had the discussion. But we could, with everyone's permission, just suspend this motion to refer for now, let the secretary treasurer speak, and then we can go back to the motion to refer if that would be in order. I believe it would be. So we have a motion to refer, it's moved and seconded, but if we let the secretary treasurer present, then people might be.
Point of privilege, Chair, point of order. There's a motion on the table that's been seconded, and we need to deal with it first. This is directly under the board's purview. So could we please deal with the motion that I've made first? Thank you.
Sure, let's do it that way then. That's what I said first, but I was trying to make it nice and friendly, but let's not do it that way. All right, so Trustee Moss has moved that it will get referred. Can we heard why she wants to refer it. Would anyone else like to speak to that?
So I can speak to my motion?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So communication with our public is completely and entirely under the board's purview. And while I appreciate what the Secretary Treasurer has put on the table, this is a conversation for the board to have in as much time as it takes, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the board has its communication with the public and allows the public to speak into, this is democracy. And like I say, while I appreciate the Secretary Treasurer's motion, this actually should have been a conversation with the board before it came to the table. And so that's where I think it needs to go, is back to a conversation with the board.
Okay, I'm going to speak against the motion to refer at this point, and I'm going to explain why. So we've had many discussions as a board about what should be done in private versus what should be done in public. Certain trustees seem to have a very varied, anyways, it keeps going back and forth, what should be public and what should be private. I believe the board discussion should be held in public, especially this when we're considering potentially changing the way we communicate with the public in our board meetings. Now, I came to the board meeting tonight prepared to let the Secretary Treasurer speak, to have a discussion and potentially then refer this to a future meeting so everyone has time to think about it. That would be my preference, is to do it that way. So to do have the Secretary Treasurer speak, have the motion, the first reading moved, but possibly actually refer it to the next meeting if we don't feel like we have enough time to talk about it. So that would be my preference, is to vote down the motion to refer at this point, potentially actually refer it to the following meeting after we've had some discussion. So that is my preference, but if anyone else would like to speak to this, we will vote on Trustee Maz's motion to refer. That's fine. If I don't prevail in that, that's also totally fine. So let's have a little discussion about that, and we can see whether we're going to talk about this tonight or talk about it, I suppose, out of the public eye at a committee. Trustee Prose.
Just clarification, your chair. So I would like to hear Simone's rationale. So can we still do that, or can she speak to the motion? Can she speak to Heather's motion by explaining her rationale? I guess it's a little bit confused. Could she still speak to the motion so I could kind of understand what's going on? Because right now, as it stands, I think there's a lot there that's not being addressed, and so I would like to defer it, but I would like to hear the rationale that's coming with it. Can we do both, or?
Well, I attempted to
I don't know
that.
that
Trustee Moss has insisted that we vote on this motion. So if we vote to refer, we will not talk about it at all tonight. We'll move on to item 4.3. If you'd like to discuss this tonight, then I suggest that we vote against the motion to refer, have our discussion. We can still do another motion to refer at that point after we've had some discussion, which is, like I say, what I came prepared to suggest, but I didn't get a chance because it was there was a motion to refer before the discussion started.
Okay, so just for clarification, so we can vote for a motion to defer after our discussion.
Yes, we could do that. Yeah, that's what I would suggest that we do is vote down. Yeah, anyway, sorry, I'm talking to it again. Never mind. I will refrain from doing that and let other people speak to this motion. Does anybody else wish to speak before Trustee Moss speaks for a second time? Okay, I don't see anybody. So Trustee Moss, you can speak to your motion to refer again.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So I have a question before I make a comment, and an additional last comment. And that is how I note that this policy change came from the Secretary Treasurer. Now this is the board bylaw. I'm just wondering how this change in policy came to this board meeting to
Point of
begin
order,
with.
Chair.
Yes.
The motion on the floor is referral. Members should be limiting their comments to the merits of referral at this point.
Thank you.
This is certainly in order in another context.
Thank you.
All right,
You
let
want
me
to
rephrase my comment then. So this is bylaw. This is the board's bylaw for the board's board meetings. Any changes that come to the board, with all due respect to the Secretary Treasurer and appreciation what she's doing here, any changes to the board bylaw should be coming from a board member, not staff. And so that was why I attempted to ask the question that apparently Trustee Swanky believes is out of order. However, so that is my comment, that this policy is or this bylaw is the entire board's purview. Thank you.
All right, so we've heard some comments about the motion to refer. So at this point, we're going to vote on the motion to refer. So once again, we can still refer this to a different meeting, potentially to a committee or to the following board meeting. If we vote it down now, if you're voting for the motion to refer, you're voting to stop this discussion. We will move on to 4.3, which is policy renovation project. If you vote against the motion to refer, we will go back to this item. We'll discuss it for a while. If for some reason we all manage to love everything, we could pass first reading tonight. If that doesn't happen, we can, at that point, if we're still feeling really up in the air, we can refer it. So there you go. So all those in favor of referring this motion at this time? Opposed? Okay, motion fails. So we're going back to the motion, or sorry, the decision, we're going back to the item, which is bylaw 5, board meeting procedures revised. I am going to throw this to the Secretary Treasurer, and I'm just going to explain what did happen. So we have been talking as a CBC committee about ways to make our board meetings run smoothly. You have noticed that we're on Zoom now. That's partly because of issues we've been having in the public meeting. We don't want to keep having Zoom meetings. We'd like to meet in public. So we've talked about that. The Secretary Treasurer, as our parliamentarian, then has made a recommendation. That's why it came through the Secretary Treasurer. The chair and vice chair were in agreement with this course of action. So I just want to make that very clear. It wasn't the Secretary Treasurer on her own coming up with this. It's the Secretary Treasurer giving her recommendation as our parliamentarian. So with that being said, I will throw it to the Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you, Trustee Reschild. I appreciate that. And with that said, I'll give a broad outline of the goals here, and encourage others to pipe in if more information is needed. So what you see in front of you is there's actually 3 changes, 3 categories of changes. The first category of changes are in the regular meeting, and that is to move from, I'm just waiting for the scrolling here. I think it's 5. Nope, it's further down. Nope, it's not marked up for some reason. So it's to change from having a comment question period where members of the public are invited to stand at a podium and provide their comments for 2 minutes, and then receive an answer, to a process where we receive them in writing, much like we did this evening, in fact, and the chair would read them and then the board would respond to them. That's the first category of changes. The second category of change is to do that for special meetings, but to do that, but also to add a public participation to special meetings. Because one thing we noticed as we went through this was that special meetings, public special meetings, did not have public participation written in to the bylaw. So we added it. So in fact, we're actually enhancing participation there, but we're only adding one session because these meetings are usually much briefer. The last thing we're doing is a bit of cleanup. There was actually a subsection for, I think you can actually see it up there above 8.3. There was just some funky formatting. I think we still need to clean it up a little bit there. The unless delivery of a written notice should actually be aligned in the galley there with all the other things, but that's sort of a small typographical thing. It used to be in 8.3.1, I think, which was silly because there was no 8.3.2. So it just didn't make sense. So what I'll do now is I'll turn to the question of the move, which I think is probably the item that's creating the most controversy, not probably these last two, but the move from spoken comments to written comments. And I'd say that yeah, sorry, there's some traffic happening here. I'd say that it's an enhancement of accessibility, and it reflects practices adopted by some other districts and that they retained after the pandemic. And from what I'd heard, actually the public comment and question period in Chilliwack was far more robust and attracted far more comments, and we can certainly present the data at a future meeting, when it was written during the pandemic. So, you know, I believe that, in fact, it could enhance the public participation to move to this method. It doesn't prevent people from attending public meetings and certainly writing comments and questions during the meeting. And if they have if somebody has a question, there is nothing to stop them from asking it. If they have multiple questions, they can also pose that in the same, you know, it's not a one question per person. It's a one written comment, which can include multiple questions. The time limit is probably the only restriction, but we have that now. And that we would respond to questions that we don't get to within 24 hours, or, you know, do our best to get back to members of the public on questions that they have. So I think, you know, we went into this viewing this as actually an enhancement, and had history in other districts to look to. And I guess there are some things like, you can see the email there. It should actually say sd33.bc.ca. So there's definitely a few typographical things in here that we didn't catch as we went through the process of putting it together. So with that, Trustee Richard, I'd open the floor back to you.
Thank you. I just want to do a couple bits of clarification just because I do have a bit more background than the other trustees. So it's probably not fair to not put all that on the table. I just wanted to talk to the superintendent, I think, would probably be the best one to answer this. I know that you did look at other districts and what they do for public participation. You also mentioned that the School Act does not require public participation at all. So I just want you to share that information with the trustees so that they have the appropriate background.
Thank you. That is correct. If you look at the School Act, there's no requirement to. At the end of the day, it's a board meeting done in public to conduct board's business. The public can always communicate with the Board of Education at any given time by emailing the Board of Education at that email address. And I think that's the level of transparency. For my scan, I scanned quite a few school districts. And again, part of my conversation with other school superintendents have been the notion around increasing the level of accessibility. And I know that during COVID, I had a couple of information questions posed back by members of the public that were unable to attend the public board meeting. So for clarity purposes, the people are allowed to be able to put in questions during the public board meeting up to and including up to the second question period through our Board of Education email address. And one of the districts that I spoke to, that has actually increased the number of public participating in the question period. So that's just some background information for consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, I guess I wanted to clarify, do other districts mostly do oral questions, or do they mostly do written questions?
I would say some have chosen to go to the written format for the comments that I just provided.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions, trustees? Let's do questions first, and then I'm just going to do a little bit more procedure clarification because there is some talk of possibly referring it. I think it would be really, ask all your questions now, and then if we move the first reading of the bylaw, I'm not going to do the motion to do all 3 readings. I don't think there's any appetite for that tonight at all. But if we don't do the motion, we wouldn't be able to make amendments. And I know for sure, I've heard that at least one trustee has some significant suggestions. So it'd be really great to get those on the table, but we can't really do that if we don't have a motion. So we'll do the questions, we'll do a motion. We can get all our ideas and stuff on the table. If people at that point are still not comfortable with a vote, then we can refer it and it's fine. So I'm just wanting to let everyone know the way that was my plan going into this meeting, was that's how we would organize this, because I do recognize having trustees not having seen this until a few days ago, it makes it really hard to like go into a vote. It is sort of a big change and I want to give people time to think about it. So we will go to trustee Moz is first.
Thank you. I do see that the secretary treasurer had her hand raised. I don't know if she wants to speak before I ask my question.
Just a quick observation, trustee Rochelle, I think what you're proposing is also in accordance with bylaw 1. I thought it might just be worth highlighting that.
Yes, I just wanted to make everyone understand the procedure though, because why, if we're going to refer why, I would still get people to make the motion. I just wanted people to understand that. Just yeah, okay. Sorry, trustee Moss, go ahead.
Right, thank you. So I think it's public information that there's an action against the board. I'm wondering if this new policy is a reaction to that.
It was not a reaction to that. No, it was a reaction to the last public meeting, which was possibly, and other public meetings we've had.
Sorry, my question was actually for the secretary treasurer. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Secretary treasurer, do you want to answer that?
Sorry, could you repeat it again?
So I said that
it's
public knowledge that there isn't a legal action against the board, and I wondered if this new change to the bylaw was any kind of a reaction to that.
No, actually, I think it was in discussion a long time before that. I mean, I think that's a pretty straightforward answer on that one.
Thank you.
Trustee West. Oh, sorry, Superintendent, did you want to say something first?
I did. I actually brought this to a superintendent's debrief, I forget, probably about a month, 2 months ago as a consideration, because I'd done some research. Thank you.
Trustee Westerby.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start my time, I just want a quick point of privilege to ask about the process here. So currently we're just asking questions, and then when the motion for the reading is brought to the table, then we can speak either for or against.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay, because I do have a number of things that I would like.
Go ahead.
For now, the question I'd like to pose is just a bit of clarity on. So I actually have 2 questions. One is a bit of clarity where it says Section 7 of the Human Rights Code. Could you just clarify why that's put in there, and why we don't refer to like other things such as like the code of conduct and other things in which we should abide by in that specific part?
Superintendent or secretary treasurer, do you want to refer to that?
Yeah, we have actually had a lawyer look at this, and there were sort of varying ways of articulating, you know, how we would discern which comments were acceptable and which weren't, and that was probably the clearest way of doing it.
Sorry.
Did I answer the question?
I think so, yeah. It already applies to the code of conduct already applies as a previous up in the bylaws, so it doesn't need to be referred to again here. And then just a second question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Just you had mentioned that people can ask as many questions as they want, but I noticed further down 5.2.3, it did say one question per person. So just would like some clarity on that.
Yeah, and I saw Trustee Reed also made a comment and also questioned that. So I think that might be something that we needed to adjust.
Yeah.
So we can correct that in a future version.
Yeah, can I just say one thing, that this is sort of, because it's a bylaw and there are 3 readings, it's sort of like a rough draft, and because this was presented to the board for the first time tonight, this is your opportunity, especially when the motion has been made, to say, I think this needs to be changed. And because like, that's great. So we can do that. There's nothing, even if you did agree with the general idea, if there's things you'd like changed, I think we can have notes being taken while we're having that discussion, and that could then come to a future meeting. Trustee Proce.
So the statement's been made that the School Act does not require public participation, that it's not required under the School Act, but it's not required either. And I think to use that, just because the School Act does not refer to it, the board has already stated that we value public participation. I think that's a moot point. The School Act doesn't necessarily define all of our roles. So I don't think that just because it doesn't say or require us to have public participation, it doesn't mean that we don't. So I just like to, and so I guess my question on that one would be, is that correct, Rohan?
That is correct. The School Act is silent on that. It's up to each Board of Education to consider that.
Okay, Trustee Swanky.
Thank you. I have a few questions, but I would like to just start with a clarifying question
Yeah.
through the chair to the Secretary Treasurer. It was mentioned, pardon me, Trustee Westry asked about why Section 7 of the Human Rights Code was mentioned and the Code of Conduct was raised. I'm trying to understand why the Code of Conduct applies to a section relating to the conduct of the public at a public participation session. Maybe I misunderstood. That's the clarification I'm looking for.
I'm not sure that I can speak to what Trustee Westerby meant by the, if that's what you're asking. I'm not quite
If
sure.
I may, I believe I misunderstood the articulation you made in addressing his point. So in short, I'm wondering if you can just reiterate why it is that we're explicit about Section 7 of the Human Rights Code and not other pieces of legislation or ministerial order that kind of govern these processes and the considerations of them.
Yeah, so I think, you know, and maybe this is a nod, Trustee Mars, to some of what you were saying, but I think over time there was an interest in expressing how do we check on questions that come to the board. You know, when is something ruled out of order? When is something considered against the, you know, human rights code? And we talked about that with our lawyer. We had a couple of versions in here. I do have Section 7 up on my computer, and that was deemed to be the clearest articulation. You know, it's not to say every other law of Canada doesn't apply as well, right? But this specific one in this circumstance is something that we felt was important to have a reference to. Does that help?
Thank you. Yes.
Trustee Proce.
Question to the secretary. So then on that number of Section 7, then who determines defamation? Who determines that who determines what is defamation and what is not? Because anything can be called defamation, and decisions can be hid behind that. If you could define that.
Yeah. So here's what section 7 it requires: that actions that interfere with life, liberty, and security of the person conform to the principles of fundamental justice. So what we're talking about is our rights as individuals, our rights as people, and there's a two-step analysis. Now, that's not to say that any of us or the chair, the current chair, or future chairs are, able to define this precisely as a lawyer would, and I think that's your point. I think that what our lawyers actually offered us is a guide to help us in that endeavor. Getting that from her. So I guess I'm trying to answer your question as best I can, and I know I'm not giving a complete answer because I'm not a lawyer, right? But that's your point, and our lawyer is going to give us a bit more guidance on it. So how's that?
Trustee Moz and then Trustee Swanky.
Thank you. So this is the difficulty. So section 7 is subjective. And so what this board would have to do would be to decide or to consult a lawyer every time we thought that perhaps something was breaking section 7. And so this is why I believe that we need to be discussing this in very thorough terms. And we don't have the time to do that tonight. The problem is section 7.
Sorry, Trustee Moz, this is actually a time for questions. So we're actually sort of going off the rails a little bit with, we need to go back to specific questions, then we'll put the motion on the table, and then people can actually speak for or against the changes, but we're not really debating the motion right now, just to clarify. Okay. Trustee Swanky?
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions, and I'm trying to be very mindful of not leading questions that lead into certain points regarding the merits of any proposed action or inaction. I wanted to inquire, I think specifically about 5.2.5, which talks about if a question is ruled out of order, the individual will be contacting the item will be brought to the next in-camera board meeting. I just wanted to understand sort of the intention of bringing it to the in-camera board meeting. I also was, I think, separate but related, looking for some clarity on, is the intention to have any question ruled in order read into the record, and then it's at the discretion of the chair to respond in writing or in real time? Or like, what is the expectation of a member of the public participating through this proposed process as the response from the board through the chair?
Secretary Treasurer, do you want to speak to that?
So I think those are super detailed, operational, once you get into the details of operating the policy questions. And we probably need to table those ones and take them back and take a closer look at how to operationalize them.
Okay, I don't see any other hands right now. So if I could get someone to make the motion that we approve first reading. Now, we do not have to vote on first reading tonight, to be clear, but I would, if it could go on the floor, then we can run this part with proper Robert's rules and everyone gets, whatever, they can propose amendments or we can do anything, but it would be very helpful if we do it that way, because I think just procedurally that makes the most sense. If we get to the point where we're starting to talk in circles or it looks like we're not going to come to any kind of agreement tonight, at that point, I would entertain a motion to refer to the next meeting, or just, and then we can do that. So that is what I'm proposing. So does anyone want to make the motion? Trustee Bonder, I believe you're putting your hand up for that.
Sure. I will move that the board approve the first reading of bylaw 5, board meeting procedures revised.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? That's Trustee Westerby. Thank you very much. Okay, Trustee Bonder, you made the motion. Do you wish to speak at this point, or would you rather let someone else speak?
For me, the main thing that sticks out about this is clarity. I feel like if there is the opportunity to write down a question, it helps to solidify what that question is. And I see this as not a terribly complicated thing. Thank you.
Trustee Reed.
Yes, thank you. I've been listening to a lot of the questions and considerations, and I do think that there are things that need to be further considered. That said, I put a lot of thought into this, moving it kind of towards this evening, and in general, in principle, I do want to speak towards the move. For just a couple of reasons. First of all, we can pivot if we don't feel like it's suiting us. It's not like it's something that's moving forward forever. It is something we should always continually update and ask for feedback on. So I think we do have the opportunity to do that. I think something we need to consider is that sometimes it isn't always the most safe workplace to sit in front of the public when we're talking contentious issues. And occasionally, not most of the things, not the things that I disagree with, occasionally things have been said that are violent, descriptive, and disgusting to myself, to other trustees. I know you can't hear it always over the camera. You might not even be able to hear it from the other side of the room, but I sit close to the gallery. I've heard things in question period. I think that if somebody takes the time to write a question down, perhaps they even have the time to filter that question just a little bit. We have other avenues to reach out to the board. We have email. That is one of the ways that you can speak to us. So if somebody can't submit a question to the meeting, they do have other ways to speak to us. But the main reason is I did look into it, and Maple Ridge and Surrey District are two that have a written question period. I spoke to multiple trustees from those districts in passing at different PCST events, and some of them felt that it did definitely increase the public ability to access the board. It does cut off certain accessibilities. I think we could make considerations for that in any edits. But I spoke to constituents, and there were many, many, many people that I know in both districts who felt that it was more accessible because they didn't have to get up, they didn't need to speak. Maybe they have a marginalized identity, maybe they have an anxiety disorder, maybe they don't have childcare and can't get to the meeting. I heard a lot of speech in favor of moving it this way, that it is more accessible. So I do see the considerations for removing some access, but overall, I think it's more accessible. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Westerby is next, and then Trustee Moss.
Thank you. So I understand and appreciate the current situation that we're facing, excuse me, and the necessity, to protect the staff and the students and the families from potentially harmful rhetoric and the defamatory statements. And I don't want to downplay the importance and the responsibility that we carry in those duties. But nonetheless, I find that these changes particularly are just not in line with Policy 110 and our district's mission, vision, and motto, which is that the community members are important members of our education community and partners in learning with the Board of Education. Together, we strive to create a culture of mutual respect that supports engagement and collaboration. And I highlight that because in order to achieve the shared goals outlined in the district strategic plan, this underscores our duty to engage with the public in a manner that is both accessible and conducive to healthy discourse and relationships, particularly in matters of transparency and a cornerstone of our democracy. So recognizing that many individuals within our district cannot attend in-person meetings, I wholeheartedly support the inclusion of allowing those at home who are tuned in the live stream to participate in public engagement via email. This measure removes barriers and enhances accessibility to our board, and I wholeheartedly support this addition. However, sorry, I have reservations about the removal of the in-person speakers from the public participation period and the limitation of speakers to only one question per comment per session. These changes introduce additional barriers and hinder access for the public that we're here to serve. The new protocol requires the public to have internet access, email access, and the ability to articulate their thoughts in writing and relatively quickly. It also restricts their ability to engage in follow-up or seek clarifications if they didn't quite get their question answered. This approach just does not align in my view of our mission of creating a culture of mutual respect that supports engagement and collaboration. So I would speak towards potentially restoring some of the language around in-person public participation and removing the restriction of 1 comment per speaker. I think this will ensure we remain have an open dialogue and a robust opportunity to speak within our community. So thank you.
Trustee Moss?
Thank you. Earlier this evening, we had a conversation regarding liaison partners, and we talked about community voice, enlist its commitment to public schools, enlisting their support, productive consensus, building allies, promoting public confidence in publicly funded education. If we change so that parents can't and partner groups cannot simply get up to the microphone to speak to the board, we're actually working at cross purposes. We're not enhancing communication in any way, shape, or form. So I'm opposed to all of the changes, with the exception of the special regular meetings where we add 5 minutes of public participation. I think it should be more. But this is not in the best interest of our community and the board's relationship with the community.
Trustee Prosay?
Yeah, I would speak against this motion. And the reason I would speak against this motion is I'm echoing both Terry and Heather on this, is that well, there's a couple things. The first thing is that the point of public participation is that I like the idea of people being able to ask questions in writing. I think that would be a nice one to add to the process so that you could have both. I think that would create a lot more public conversation for those that have access and that are good or want to write. So I'm not against that factor. I just think the ability to speak in public to the board is also important. So I would like to, I would love to add the writing aspect to it. But I think to negate or to get rid of the public participation would be a detrimental to our board. Another thing is that the whole point of being in politics and being in the board is to challenge and to debate and to have concerns and to express concerns and also to express disagreements. These are not defamations. These are not defamations. These are just what we do in a democratic society to hammer out ideas and hammer out ideologies and figure things out. That's just what we do in a political world. I don't think that for you to feel safe, words are not necessarily, words are not, we're not shooting each other. We are actually having conversation, and sometimes it may be tough conversations, but words do not kill. Words can hurt. I don't deny that. But I think that it's important that we retain the integrity of the use of language and words amongst each other so that we don't have, and because what's the danger is with the defamation aspect of this argument is that now we have someone that censors or determines what defamation is and what isn't. And I think that gets to really, really and not maybe on this board it might work, but in the next board the dynamics may change, and then you have a whole other aspect, and then everybody loses in their the ability to be recognized as a valuable individual in our community. So I would really encourage us to defer this or not vote for it. So thank you.
I would like to speak to the motion before us. So the first time this was raised, this idea, I did not really agree with it because I was like, we've had the public able to do this. I feel weird about it. But then when I did learn that most districts actually, or a lot of districts have written either no public participation or written already, it made it feel less like we were doing something odd or wrong. And then I think you always have to take current realities into account. There's a movement sort of throughout the province to disrupt board meetings in various ways on various issues. And I think that making it just so the board meeting is about the board doing its business in public. allows us to do that business, the public still has the opportunity to provide feedback. And they would still, I do think though, that there are some changes. So just 1 second, I just want to finish my first thought. So the public still has the opportunity to ask questions. They can ask a question before, they can have one in advance prepared that gets submitted. They can ask a question during the meeting, but if they've got a device, they can quickly send off an email, or there'll be a form that they can write a question. It doesn't have to be a pithy question. It can literally be like, if we were talking about the calendar, like, why isn't the Christmas break starting on the 18th or whatever, like, it can be as quickly as that. It doesn't have to be a big, you don't have to write your thesis. So I think it doesn't take away from the public's ability to participate. I think it does take away from, bad actors being able to use the fact that we live stream our meetings to sort of grandstand and create just a bad environment for the trustees, for the staff and everybody. So that's why I do support this change. But I think that there are some issues with the way it's currently written. So I will very much entertain a motion to refer to a follow-up meeting now that we've had some discussions, partly based on what people have said and partly based on my own thinking over the last few days. I think that making the first public participation period have questions submitted before the meeting, I don't see why we have that when the second one, it says up till that public participation period. It seems like we should allow questions to be submitted up to the start of the first public participation period. I think that my understanding was that it was put in there as one question per person. It didn't mean literally one question. It meant like it could have 5 questions in it, but 1 per person, just to allow more people to ask questions. But I think that could be actually just removed, because if there's no one else asking, why can't a person ask a follow-up? We could have it so that maybe we could write in something that was, if you've already asked a question, another one won't be entertained until other people's have been. There's a way to word that, I think. So with those changes, I think I would feel more comfortable, but I do think that we need to look at the realities of the life in this province right now. And I think that moving towards a written system just deals with a lot of issues, and will make it a lot easier for myself or any future chair to navigate the question period as well, because it gives you that time to reflect and read and process instead of trying to do it on the fly. Does anyone else wish to speak at this point? Trustee Westerby, I'm just going to give you one pause. But Trustee Swanky, did you wish to say anything before Trustee Westerby speaks for a second time?
Well, I a little unclear as to the process. There are a number of points I'd like to make regarding the potential concerns or considerations outlined in the draft. But I also am wanting to have a productive conversation here that also lets us get on with our other business. So if we're moving to the point of referral, I'm happy to reserve those comments until we work on them.
Well, I would really love, just because I had heard that you had some concerns in advance. So if you would be willing to air them, I would love to hear them so that then we can refer, because that's partly the reason I wanted to have this discussion first, is that we can have some notes made so that the next time we talk about this, we've addressed concerns.
Point of order, Chair. I started off this whole discussion with a motion to refer, and now we're back talking to making a motion to refer, and this board already voted it down. So I'm not really sure what we're doing now.
That has been explained multiple times from the very beginning of this meeting. So I'm confused why you're confused, but I specifically said we could vote that motion to refer down, put this on the table, have a bit of a discussion, and then refer once we've talked about it. So that would be a second motion to refer after we've had a discussion. So Trustee Swanky, I'm just giving you your opportunity. If you prefer not to speak tonight, you don't have to. I'm not putting pressure on you. I just don't want your ideas to not get taken into account.
I am happy to. I think where I'm challenged there is the fundamental philosophical conversation about how public participation is facilitated. Depending on what the decision is in the direction of the board and based on the balance of all considerations, then we get into how is that articulated in the proposed bylaws. So I think where my attention is drawn, I'll work through a few different pieces here, but if I go to 5.2.2, It's already been drawn attention to the fact that we need to clarify the email address. I want to question whether or not it's appropriate to embed the email address within our bylaw to be entirely prescriptive. We have no mechanism within bylaws to suspend them. And so we need to have a little bit of flexibility in how we structure them to support our business. I would go on further. It identifies the form available to the meeting, but it also restricts questions to those submitted 30 minutes before the beginning of the meeting. So I'm trying to understand, are we admitting members of the public to the meeting in advance? So 30 minutes in advance to put theirs in writing? Or there's, again, that lack of clarity in what the process is. If I can go on a little bit further, I would echo some of the comments about to what extent one question per person is appropriate. We can have quite lengthy, and quite robust, I would say, agenda packages put before the public. I've already mentioned the considerations of how questions are addressed and the appropriateness of addressing matters in camera. 5.2.7 I've mentioned. I do want to mention 5.5. If the board was to move away from submitted, spoken questions, 5.5 should also be struck because it addresses specifically the ability of the chair to terminate a spoken question to the board. And then finally, I want to go down to special meetings, if I may. 8.4 cites 5.2, which actually talks about 2 participation periods. It's a little bit cumbersome. We need to be careful in that the addition of 8.4 should be explicit that it is all public special meetings, not all special meetings, because you could have an in-camera special meeting. And I believe it should be just a little bit more clearly stated about a single public participation period based on the following principles or considerations. But ultimately, that's a committee of the whole piece, if we get to that point. I don't know if that helps. I've got a few other points.
No, that's excellent. Very detailed, Trustee Swanky. I just wanted to get that on the record for the public, since the point of doing this is to have the debate in public. So if you're okay, then emailing all of those points, obviously, to the Secretary Treasurer would be helpful, because then it's in writing and not just oral. Trustee Westerby, I see your hand. This would be your second chance to speak. I'm just wondering, at this point, I believe this is a good first discussion, and I would like to move to refer this to the next meeting, possibly with another opportunity in between for trustees to discuss this. So I would like to move that at this point we refer instead of going to you, Trustee Westerby, if that is all right with you, unless you did have your hand up before I said that.
Yeah, I did, right? But literally, just as a point of privilege, I did have it just to say exactly what Trustee Swanky just went through. Whereas I had similar points to make along the line. So if we're going to refer and I can make those points, then that's fine, because I think a lot of it's been covered already, and it's just really detailed work. And I'm happy to do that work. And it's going to come back to the public, so it's nothing that we won't talk about.
Okay, so I am referring this to the next public meeting at CBC. We would discuss whether we need to have a session in between there for trustees, but my motion, just to say, is to refer it to the next public meeting. Do I have a seconder for that? Trustee Bondar, is there, I've explained why I wanted to have this discussion tonight, and also I think referring makes a lot of sense. I don't think that there's a good consensus, and I think there's lots of edits that really need to be made. So I think at this point is a good time to refer. Does anyone want to speak to that motion? Trustee Prose and then Trustee Moss.
Could I make an amendment to this motion that we refer it to a committee, not to the next meeting, to a committee?
You can, yes, you can amend it to go to a committee. Does anyone want to second that amendment? Trustee Moss. So you would say committee of the whole, which means all the trustees is, okay. So that's seconded by Trustee Moss. Trustee Prose, do you want to say why you want it to go to a committee instead of the next public meeting? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Sorry, thank you, Trustee Richard. Rochelle, the reason why I would like to see it go to committee, because I think that the committee can do a lot more detailed work and a lot more like ask the hard questions in a committee meeting with other people that can, like, either some public participation, or we can ask some other partner groups that may have some concerns, and then we can utilize their views and before we present it to the public. Otherwise, we might be just getting into not a shouting match, but we could just get into a debate in public that doesn't really have any resolution and maybe leaves a lot of unanswered questions. So I think a committee would be a really great way to work through this and solidify some of the hard questions that need to be answered.
Okay, I just need to clarify. The motion is for a committee of the whole, which means the trustees, not a committee, some new ad hoc committee, the partner groups, though. I just need to know that because we need to know what your motion is.
Okay, I would make a motion as the committee of the whole.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I just wanted, we need to clarify that.
Thank you. No, you're fair. No, that's
Yeah.
very fair. Thank you.
Okay, so that was, trustee Prose is saying it should go to committee of the whole, which is all the trustees. Trustee Moss has seconded that. Basically, honestly, everybody, this is fine with me. I just said to the next meeting because we actually have to bring it back to the next meeting regardless, because it's like we'd have to vote on it. So it's fine if we want to amend it to go to a committee first. That's fine with me. Trustee Bondar, do you want to speak to that?
I guess I was wondering, since we are the members of the committee of the whole, I don't really understand the difference between those two.
Oh, yeah, good point. So committee of the whole would be just the trustees basically meeting without being in a public meeting.
So like an in-camera type of meeting, like a closed meeting?
It wouldn't be in camera, so it wouldn't be secret and like subject to
would
those
just-
rules, but it would just be basically allow us to have a more informal discussion. This motion would still come back to the board for a public debate, but we would be basically be able to do some editing behind the scenes that would allows you to not take up so much time in a public meeting, basically. Yeah. Trustee Westerby?
So just to clarify, we have some points that we want to make, as Trustee Swanky pointed out, and myself as well. We would be emailing these points to the Secretary Treasurer, and then in the public, if assuming that this motion that's currently on the table fails and we were to proceed to the public meeting, there would be some changes as we've just discussed, and then we can continue this conversation all entirely in the public. What's currently on the table, if passes, we would have conversations in private, and then those changes would be coming forward to the public meeting.
Yes, and then at that point, we would still debate those in public, but it was like the editing would happen just outside the public meeting.
I just want to speak against just the amendment. I feel like we can move this forward in the public and get it done in a transparent way. I always feel more towards transparency than not. So I'll just speak against the amendment and for the original motion.
Trustee Swanky. Oh, you're muted, Trustee Swanky.
Apologies, cardinal sin for these Zoom meetings. I'm mindful of there is language that has been moved and seconded in a public meeting. We can table this, but all we can do is come up with amendments that are going to come to the next meeting. We can't actually work on that. It is not a decision-making venue. It's an opportunity to speak without the structure of some of the. Sorry, is there a member want to speak to the matter? No,
I
okay.
don't believe.
I just wanted to be mindful of, if I misunderstood it, members, we can't be taking this away and amending it. That's not in any way the suggestion here, is it? Am I misunderstanding something?
I believe the suggestion is that we would be able to discuss some of these changes you, for example, proposed and stuff, and then the version we would look at the next public meeting would be with some suggested edits incorporated, but we would still then debate it at the public meeting in that form. That is my understanding of what would happen were we to do
and if I may, I think that's what I want to draw attention to. We cannot change the language in between meetings.
Yes,
We've moved and seconded the proposed bylaw with this language. We could then amend the proposed bylaw as part of second reading in line with bylaw 1. But the suggestion that we can somehow have different language and do that work out of view of the public is not, I think.
Sorry, I believe the correct procedure would be to come to the next meeting and propose it as an amendment. So if we had done edits, it would be like propose an amendment to this language that's here then that amended version would be the one we'd worked on. So yes, I think you and I are saying the same thing. It's just, we were saying, yes, I agree. You can't just suddenly start voting. You would have to then propose that as an amendment. Yes, but you're correct on that. Yeah. Trustee Mons. Oh, sorry, Secretary Treasurer.
Sorry, Trustee Maz, I'm doing it again. But this might help the discussion. I'm not sure who's got the screen tonight, whether it's the superintendent or Kirk. Do you have the screen? Can you put up bylaw 1, because I think it'll make clear what we're talking about here. And it's just down the bottom of the first page of bylaw 1. Trustee Mars, I hope this helps with yours. Otherwise, I apologize for interrupting you again. No, you've got to go to the
Part of
web
the package.
bylaw 1.
Not bylaw 5, bylaw 1.
You want to go to the website?
On the web, you've
Thank
actually got to go clean. It's not in the
Yeah,
package.
gotcha.
And just down the bottom of the first page. There we go. Bylaw 2.3. So, Trustee Richard, did you want to?
Yeah, so we did, sorry, this got a little bit, it's confusing because I know that this is a complex thing. So anyways, so normally first reading is discussion of the principle of the bylaw, which we've kind of done tonight, but I don't think there's enough agreement to vote. I feel like some people would feel in its current form they'd have to vote against it, which is why I'm moving to refer to the next meeting. So then the first reading is normally you talk about the principles of the bylaw. The second reading would be debate and or amendment. We could probably do first and second reading at the next meeting because we've done this and potentially a committee if this goes to committee. And then third reading would be consideration and final decision. So just to clarify that that's sort of the procedure we were in. Okay, Trustee Moss, sorry.
Thank you. So I realize that this board has never dealt with a committee of the whole. So a committee of the whole, the purpose of it is to have a more informal conversation, to tie up loose ends, to deal with policy work that will kill the public. It's a means to an end to be able to hammer out details that really it's not a matter of transparency, it's a matter of structure and putting a finer point on things so that we don't spend all this time during a public board meeting when we have business to attend to. And that's why I made the motion to refer at the very beginning, because I knew that this policy needed a fulsome conversation with the entire board. And so that's where we are now. And it's not being not transparent. What we will end up coming to are amendments to this policy that we have discussed and may or may not agree on them. The debate would still happen at the board table, but the committee of the whole is the vehicle for us to be able to have the fulsome conversation that's really not necessary at a board meeting.
All right, trustees, I think we've had enough debate of this amendment. So all those in favor to amend my motion, which was to refer this to the next public meeting, to refer it to committee of the whole. All those in favor? Opposed? Trustee Swanky, did you abstain?
I did in the matter.
Okay, so
Order, Chair, was that not Trustee Procey's motion to send this to a committee of the whole?
yes.
And you
So,
said it was your motion.
No,
I think you were
No,
voting on an amendment to your resolution.
Yes, no, that's not what I said. I said the amendment to my motion, which was to refer to the next public meeting. The amendment is to refer it instead to committee of the whole. Now, the votes that I saw were two in favor, which was Trustee Procey and Trustee Moz, and 3 opposed, which was myself, Trustee Bondar, and Trustee Reed. I did not see how Trustee Westerby voted. Were you opposed or for?
Opposed to the amendment.
Amendment. Okay, so, and then trustee Swanky abstained. So that motion fails. So we're going back to my motion, which is to refer this to the next public meeting. So the motion on the floor now is to refer first reading of bylaw 5 more board meeting procedures revised to the next public meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so that motion carries. So that's was myself, trustee Reed, trustee Bondar, trustee Westerby for, trustees Prose and Laws against, and trustee Swanky abstained. So motion carries. We are going to refer, and we're also going to have a 10-minute recess right now, trustees, because we are needing a break. So we're gonna recess for 10 minutes and then we will reconvene at 7:22 to proceed with the rest of our agenda. Thank you. Okay, trustees, we're going to be resuming in 1 minute, so if everyone can make their way back to their desk. Okay, everybody, I'm just waiting. There's a couple trustees not quite with their cameras on yet, so I just want to make sure I don't lose anyone before we get started. Oh, and also, wait, is the secretary treasurer on? Sorry, we have to wait for the secretary treasurer because otherwise our meeting's not, oh, there she is. Okay. All right, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. We are on to 4.3 policy renovation project policies to be reaffirmed. We have 2 policies tonight to be reaffirmed. The first one is policy 530, leadership appointments and assignments. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board Chair. So first of all, thank you. I have to apologize. There was an error. There was an incorrect draft that was part of it, and that's been corrected up. I want to thank Trustee Terry Westerby for bringing that information to my attention. Really quickly, there is no change in the policy by itself. It is the same policy. It looks a bit more prettier by itself. And the admin procedures have been much more robust compared to the previous admin regulation. But pretty much just as a summary, the Board of Education will appoint all of the senior leadership staff, superintendent, secretary treasurer, assistant secretary treasurer, directors, so assistant superintendents, principals and vice principals, and conveys the responsibility of hiring the rest of the school district staff, supervisors and managers to the school superintendent. And as we always do, I bring up all of the assignments, reassignments of principals and vice principals to an in-camera meeting for board consideration and approval. Thank you.
Okay, trustees, does somebody want to make this motion? Oh, wait, sorry. Trustee Swanky, your hand's up. Do you have a question or were you going to make the motion?
I did have a question. I also just
Yes,
want to
go
note,
ahead.
Trustee Moz had, I don't know if it was a question or.
Yeah, it's gone now, so I'm not sure. I was just going to say her name, but then it's, oh, okay, sorry. Trustee Swanky, carry on, and then Trustee Moz's hand is back up, so.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I wanted to draw attention to section D of the principals and vice principals portion of the supporting administrative procedure. I don't know if that can be brought up in screen for the benefit of all trustees. If I may, Chair, the section states that in the event of an unexpected short-term vacancy, the superintendent may appoint an acting principal or vice principal for the duration of the vacancy. Drawing attention to the policy, it states that the board shall appoint principals and vice principals to the district. And so my question is just through the chair to staff, does the policy right now lend enough flexibility for the superintendent to actually exercise that authority? They should have that authority. I'm not questioning that in any way. I'm asking if the policy is flexible enough to allow for them to make that decision.
Superintendent?
Yeah, thank you. It does, because these are going to be acting appointments. And realistically, the board appoints somebody on a continuous basis.
May I just follow up on that then, Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm just wondering, do we need to be any more explicit within the proposed policy? I know none of this is new language. I think what I'm putting is fresh eyes on old language to just say, is there something that either to identify it as a continuous position or to identify that there's an exception in the case of an acting role?
I think, thank you. Great question. I think what I might do actually is change the admin procedure as opposed to appoint, assign. That'll clarify that particular piece. So thank you.
Makes perfect sense.
Good catch.
All right, trustee Moss.
Thank you. So this is not actually reaffirming because it's changed. It's not the same as it was before, correct? Like it's been rewritten. What the difference being here in the admin regulations, that the board has been removed from the interviewing of the assistant superintendents, the human resources director, and the assistant secretary treasurer. Is that correct?
That's not the intent. Generally, as in the past, if you look at the policy, first of all, the policy is pretty much identical when it comes to process. When it comes to the hiring of the assistant school superintendent, the school superintendent will come up with the process we brought to the Board of Education.
So for clarification, please. So the board has traditionally always sat in on the interviews with the assistant superintendents, with the human resources director, and the assistant secretary treasurer. And so that's not changed?
That is correct, because the superintendent brings a process for the board's consideration.
Just to clarify, Superintendent, I don't believe that the assistant secretary treasurer has been a part of that process since I've participated.
Not the last time, but generally, looking at for the assistant superintendents and the directors, I will bring a process to the Board of
Oh, for
Education.
principals, I mean, sorry, for principal hiring, I don't know, maybe I misunderstood trustee Maz's question.
If I could finish up my my question that I was asking the superintendent chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So this board and the last board has not had to be part of that process for the hiring, but that has been the practice. So I just wanted to ensure that the board was still going to be part of that practice. As we know, an assistant superintendent may end up having to step into the role of the superintendent. And so that's why it's very important for the board to be part of that whole process. Thanks.
May I comment, Trustee Mars?
Yeah,
I think
go ahead.
the whole intent is that whenever there is a process to be hiring a senior staff member, the superintendent will bring a process to the Board of Education. So for example, in the last bit of time, we had the assistant school superintendent and the secretary treasurer. There was I brought a process for consideration that was approved, and then the Board of Education members were part of that hiring consideration. Does that answer your question, Trustee Mars?
Well, yes, it does. I'm just wanting, I mean, I know that you've rewritten the admin regulation so that the board is not taking part in the principal and vice principal interviews anymore. And that was that's a change from the previous practice. And so I'm just looking for some reassurance that practice will not be changed.
That is correct. And just for clarity purposes, it was part of the admin procedure that we actually had trustees as part of the PVP hiring committee. And I made the clarity that the hiring principals, vice principals, part of the superintendent's responsibility became operational in nature. So we just made that change. And I brought that for conversation's sake at our last Pro-D session with the members of the Board of Education. But just to reconfirm, Trustee Mars, you're right, all the senior positions, I'll bring a process through for consideration, and that'll include trustees.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Trustee Bondar.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, I really preferred the changes to just the wording of this particular policy. I found the previous version was actually really awkward and didn't make it as clear that the board's sole purpose was to hire the one employee whose purpose is then to go build the rest of it. So I feel like the new verbiage works really well.
Okay, just to clarify for trustees, this is for questions only because the motion's not on the floor. Sorry, sorry, Trustee Bob. I thought there was going to be a question, and then I'm like, oh no, I should have stopped her. Sorry, Trustee Westerby, do you have a question, or are you wanting to make the motion?
I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
There's just a line here that says, where appropriate, the selection process will include consultation with partners. And I'm just wondering, through the chair to superintendent, if you could show where in the admin procedure it highlights like how that selection process looks like, or where you might refer to in that selection.
So that would, a great question, Trustee Westerby, where appropriate. I would be bringing a process that includes consultation with partnerships. And that becomes a documentation piece for the board to approve the process by itself. It's not in the admin procedure. It's a process-driven piece that I bring to the board. Thank you.
So can I just clarify? So you're basically saying for all of the upper management positions, you bring a procedure to the board before that process happens. So if you would at that point say whether it was going to include consultation, if we thought it needed to or didn't need to, we would speak to it at that point when that was brought to us. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Trustee Moss, do you have another question before I put this on the floor?
Well, I kind of have a point of order. I didn't want to jump in, but I just wanted to reiterate, as a trustee who sat on this the committee of the whole to write this original policy. I believe it was written in 2013. I don't know if it says on the bottom, but it took us 2 full sessions to write that policy. So I just want to make sure we have an appreciation for the work that the last board, that the board of the day who wrote this original policy did. Thanks.
Okay. Can I get someone to make the motion? Put up your hand if you want to make the motion. I can't see anyone right now, so if you can
I
just
can make it.
Okay, perfect.
I
Thank
will
you.
move. Yep. Sorry. I will move that the Board of Education reaffirm policy 530, leadership appointments and assignments, 300, leadership appointments and assignments as presented.
Thank you. Okay, do you want to say anything, or I think you already kind of does anyone else wish to speak before we vote on this? Okay, not seeing anybody.
Point of order, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Seconder.
Thank you.
Seconder. Sorry, Trustee Westerby seconds. Thank you, Trustee Swanky. Oh, because I wasn't seeing everyone, I got thrown off. Okay. I can see everyone now though. All right, so sorry about that. I don't see anyone wishing to speak. So all those in favor that the Board of Education reaffirm policy 530, leadership appointments and assignments, formerly 300, as presented. Opposed? I believe Trustee Moss, did you abstain or did you vote? I didn't see your hand that time.
No, I voted in favor.
Okay, you voted in favor. Okay, great. So motion carries. That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. We are moving on to policy 545, respectful workplace. Superintendent, did you want to speak to this before it?
This will be Assistant Director Rachel Green. Rachel, over to you.
Thank you. So I have for your consideration this evening a new version of our policy 545 respectful workplace, formerly 402 respectful workplace. And our recommendation is that you reaffirm as presented.
Thank you very much, trustees. You've had a chance to look at this before the meeting. Does anybody have any questions for Director Green before we put this motion on the table? Trustee Westerby.
Thanks. Just, I'm not sure who if this should go to staff. I just had a question about the line. This policy is intended to meet the legal obligations of the board and enhance promotion of respectful workplace. I'm just wondering if someone could speak to why it just feels kind of like, I'm not sure if it's why it's necessary to have that line in there. Just yeah, maybe I could to the
Maybe
staff.
staff can speak to that.
Yes, because a part of this policy is a legal regulatory compliance piece. There are some obligations within WorkSafe BC regulation that require organizations to have a policy statement around respectful workplace and bullying and harassment.
Okay, Trustee Moss.
So my question is, so this has gone from a one paragraph policy to 1, 2, 3, 2 pages, 2 full pages of policy. And have we had circumstances where this policy, the short one, was insufficient for dealing with disrespectful workplace, as it were?
Director Green.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So yes, actually, this is such a complex issue, and we do have circumstances such as this arise I don't want to say quite frequently, but they do arise in the district where we do need to refer to policy and to hold expectations. And so the changes to this policy are more meaningful and make it more robust and allow us to uphold it. There's also a lot, especially within the WorkSafe BC regulation, there's a lot of those definitions and terms. So it's really helpful to have it encoded in policy for us to be able to share that with staff.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Swanky.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Under responsibilities of the board, it is specific of the BC Human Rights Code and WorkSafe BC policy. I just wanted to ensure that's an exhaustive list. I'm often in favor of thinking all legal or all legislation, including, ABC. In this case, it seems to be limited to those two. I just wanted to ensure that's a definitive list.
Can you speak to that?
I'm sorry, unmute. With respect to the specific compliance around bullying and harassment, those would be the 2 pieces of legislation we'd be referring to. However, we could make a change around including but not limited to.
No, I'm comfortable, and these can always come forward as amendments. But no, appreciate the clarity. Thank you.
Trustee Westerby.
Thanks. Just was trying to think of how to pose this as a question. There's a very line at the beginning that says we're committed to ensuring a respectful workplace and believes that every employee has the right to work in an environment free from harassment. I'm wondering if there's room in there for something along the lines of the board is also committed to upholding the employees' rights and things like that. I don't know if there's room for that in here. I'm just wondering if the staff could speak to something about us being committed to upholding the rights of the employees, if that's a place for this here, or if we feel like that's something that we should speak to here.
So for clarification, are you meaning like ensuring the human rights of employees?
And like the rights that we commit to as a district through all the different various agreements.
I'm not sure. I think we'd have to take that back and consider this. This really is central to the bullying and harassment piece. So I'm not sure what wording we would look at with that.
Okay, now, Assistant Superintendent Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. Trustee Westerby, on that note, there is a line on page 1 of that policy that does say employees have the right to. So I don't know if that addresses your concern or not, but it does indicate employees' rights to work in an environment. And then it goes on to speak to what the policy is about. So I don't know if that's helpful clarification.
Right. Okay, if I could get somebody to make the motion, please.
I actually just have one more question,
Oh,
but then
sorry, go ahead.
my question was, there was no specific reference to online bullying. Is there need for that, or is that an appropriate time to ask you that question? Yeah, thank you. Specifically with reference to social media and stuff, yeah.
I believe there is room for us to include a statement about that around definitions of what prohibited conduct would include in our administrative procedure. I can't recall if we specifically referred to social media or not, but we should take a look at that. We could include that in a list of prohibited conduct for sure.
That could be great. I didn't see it in there, but yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I guess I'll make the motion. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yes, that'd be great.
We'll move that. Oh, there we go. Thank you. I will move that the Board of Education reaffirm policy 545, respectful workplace, in the 402 respectful workplace as presented.
All right, seconded by Trustee Reed. Thank you. Do you wish to speak at all to that?
The only other thing that I wanted to mention is that I was just really happy to see a very comprehensive, list of what bullying or harassment could look like, including things like microaggressions. It was really good to see a lot of that language in there. Thank you.
Okay, and Trustee Swanky.
Thank you, Chair. I will speak in favor of the policy. I appreciate far more robust than what was previously there, and appreciate the work done to support that. I did just want to raise, as mentioned in the policy manual review update, the expectation of the board to, within their term of office, review governance policies. So I did just want to draw attention. It talks about the responsibilities of the board and for the board to consider whether or not policy 130 aligns with the expectations of the board as outlined in the proposed policy. And I'd even include within that this policy talks about the training that is the expectation of every employee in the district. And I would wonder if there should be an expectation, members of the board, where every employee of the district participates in a training. Ought there be an expectation that a member of the board participate in the same training within their term of office? So certainly speaking in support of it, but also thinking about how do we apply this policy to the governance work of the Board of Education over our term of office.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands up. So all those in favor, oh, sorry, Trustee Westerby.
All right, I figured out what I was trying to ask earlier. So where we say we believe in the rights of employees to work in an environment free of harassment. So those are employee rights. So I figured it would make more sense to say we are committed to ensuring a respectful environment and committed to upholding the rights of employees to work in an environment free of harassment. So it's not a belief, it's a commitment that we want to make of upholding the rights of their employees. So that's what I was trying to say. I don't know if that stands. I'd be happy to make the amendment if that makes sense. But first, I'd like to pose a question to staff if that still fits with the purview of this and with the intent and does not break any of the legal requirements. If the staff could speak to that first before I make my amendment. Oops.
No, I think that sounds fine. There's no legal issues from my end for that amendment.
Okay, could I then make the motion to amend?
Okay, so we need to have the exact language and exactly where it goes before we can vote on an amendment. So if you can just, we need to make sure it's. Because I see that there already is committed to ensuring a respectful workplace.
So just the distinction is that it's not a belief that every employee has a right, because it is the right. So we are committed to upholding that right. I feel like that's the slight amendment. And I've emailed it to Secretary Treasurer to, oh wait, I guess I should email it to the superintendent because he has the screen.
Yeah, I don't quite understand your amendment myself, so I need to see it written down before we can have someone second it and vote on it, I believe.
I forwarded it.
Thanks. I gotta go get it. 1 second.
It's a minor thing, but I think it does make a difference.
Just 1 second. Trying to get it off my email. Well, here it comes. I had to go restart my other system there. There we go.
This needs to have is, I guess, just to make those.
Does anybody wish to second this amendment?
You need to add the right.
It's committed to the rights.
After the word upholding, there should be a the.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Thank you.
All right. If you could hold on. Does anyone wish to second that amendment? Trustee Bondar. Trustee Westerby, do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Yeah, it's again, it's minor, but I do think that it's a commitment to uphold the existing rights that the employees already have, rather than just saying we believe in the rights. I think it's just minor, but we already used the word commitment, so I just want to stick to that theme of being committed to upholding the rights.
Trustee Reed?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the amendment. I like to use action words when possible. We don't just believe in it. We want to do it. We're committed to doing it. It makes sense.
I'm going to vote against the amendment, not because I dislike the intent, but because I dislike the writing. I feel like the word committed followed by committed is really not good writing. So I don't really like that. Sorry, no offense to the mover of this amendment. I would be more comfortable if it was just if the motion had been to change the word believes to recognizes, I think would have done the same intention and would be less redundant as a sentence. So I was fine with it in its original form. I would be fine with replacing the word believes with recognizes, but I find that the new proposed language is just not my preferred writing style. So I would vote against the amendment. Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? All right. Oh, Trustee Prose.
Yeah, I think from a linguistical point, I think the principles are the same, but I do agree with you, Willow, on that, on the flow of language. I think the first version is written better.
Okay, hold on. I don't see any other hands up, so can we just see the amendment back on the screen and we'll vote on the amendment and then we will carry on voting on the whole. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, which is to change believes to is committed to upholding the rights of employees. All those in favor of that amendment? Opposed? Okay, that amendment fails, so we're going back to the original motion. Does anyone want to speak to the original motion?
Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I just wanted to acknowledge a member of staff with their hand up.
Oh, sorry, it's there. When the screen, thank you very much. It's hard with the.
It was me. I just wanted to double check who voted where on that last.
Oh,
motion.
it was trustees Reed, Bondar, and Westerby for the amendment. The other 4 trustees opposed, so the amendment failed.
Thank you.
Okay, so does anyone else want to speak to the main motion? No other amendments? We're good. Okay. All those in favor of reaffirming policy 545, respectful workplace, formerly 402, respectful workplace, as presented? Opposed? Okay, I believe that was unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Motion carries. All right, so we are on to 4.4, which is policy renovation project policies to be repealed. So there are 5 policies to be repealed. We can do them one by one, or we can do them as one motion to repeal all of them. I'm open to either suggestion. I would ask, before we were to entertain one to repeal all of them, that I would ask if there's anyone that someone wanted to pull aside and talk about because they feel passionately about it. If that's not the case, I think we could do it as one, but if there's any that we really need to talk about individually, we can totally do them as one. As individuals, that's fine with me. I have no real preference. Trustee Moss.
Thank you. Well, I need to speak specifically to policy 502. So no to doing this on block.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, let's do policy 502 first then, and then we can still ask the same question if we want to. So we'll move on to 4.4.1, policy 502, student search and seizure. This is a recommendation to repeal, and Rachel Green is going to speak to this first.
Okay, so we have for your consideration the repeal of policy 502 based on our belief that the policy is operations in nature and is made redundant by our updated admin procedure that was drafted in consultation with the RCMP.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions before we put the motion on the table? If you're wanting to speak for or against it, we'll just put the motion on the table if you have a question first. Okay, can someone put the motion on the table and then we can discuss? Someone can just unmute themselves and maybe.
I move that.
Okay, Trustee Westerby.
I move that the Board of Education repeal policy 502, student search and.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Trustee Bondar, thank you. Trustee Westerby, do you want to speak to the motion?
It sounds like it's been made redundant, which is pretty common in this policy. renovation project. Just makes sense to eliminate policies that hold no weight.
Okay, thank you very much. Trustee Maws, you spoke to wanting to speak to this, so I'll let you go next.
Thanks. Actually, this was not the one I wanted to speak to. It was the next one.
Okay,
However,
never mind
but
then.
however, I am going to say that this is a nice, neat little tidy policy that is easy for parents and students to locate in a policy book and to see exactly what the schools are proposing should they need to search a student's lockers and or whatever. I don't like the idea of an admin regulation standing in isolation without a policy like this specifically for parents and students.
Okay, not seeing any other hands up. All those in favor that the Board of Education repeal policy 502 student search and seizure? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Trustee Maws was opposed. Okay, so moving on to policy 503, interrogation or interviewing of students by police in school settings. Rachel Green again.
Okay, so for consideration, repeal of policy 503, interrogation or interviewing of students by police in school settings, for much the same rationale as the previous repeal. We believe that this is operations in nature and is made redundant by the updated admin procedure that was drafted in consultation with our CMB.
Okay, thank you. Do we have someone willing to make the motion? Trustee Bondar, go ahead.
I will move that the Board of Education repeal policy 503, interrogation or interviewing of students by police in school settings.
Is there a seconder? Trustee Westerby, thank you. Trustee Bondar, do you wish to speak to it at all?
I do not, thank you.
Trustee Maws.
So this policy speaks to parents having the right to be present when their child is interrogated. The admin reg does not. So I am entirely opposed to repealing this because parents need to understand and know that they have the right to be present if their child is being interrogated. So there is no way we can repeal this.
I just want to ask a question. I thought it was like the law that a minor had the right to have a parent present. Is that why it's not in the admin reg, or is this actually an oversight? Because I do agree that that is an issue. So I'm just wondering if there was a reason that was left out. Staff speak to that.
I could. So Assistant Director Green, so generally when students are interrogated, parents are contacted and they're part of the process. And if that has to be added to the admin procedure, I'm looking at Mrs. Jordan and Mrs. Jordan.
Yeah, so if you take a look at the procedure itself, it says that students are not to be interviewed except in the following circumstances. So it's really clear about when students are interviewed with respect to when a parent may not be part of that particular interview, and it's around safety.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. That makes sense to me. Okay. Trustee Westerby.
Thank you. I appreciate how fulsome the admin reg is about this, and I do notice that there's specific things about social workers interviewing students in cases of potential abuse, and I think it's important that we have all that detail in there. But I'm hesitant in repealing this policy or without doing further work or hearing more from the community, just knowing that there are equity seeking groups that this may impact on a different scale. And I just want to be cautious of completely repealing a policy about about that without just getting further feedback from the community and from those groups. Maybe just a question to staff about what that feedback might look like on this, if that's already been done potentially. Just maybe if there's some way you can ease my mind on that issue.
Jordan, Mrs. Savage, can you put and Mr. Manuel?
So I'm just thinking about the previous question around the parent piece, and in on the procedure, it's Mrs. Jordan mentioned that students are not to be interviewed except in the following circumstances. Down in 1.2 and 1.21. So when it's really necessary for that to happen, there is a process to contact the parent. If the parent, guardian, caregiver cannot be reached, then the principal acts as an in loco parentis. So there is a full process which is what we do follow in our schools. This does happen from time to time, and it works really well, and it's outlined here. So I'm confused as to what further information we would need to glean, but maybe I'm.
No, and if you go further, actually, in the admin procedure, it outlines in situations where police wish to have contact with a student at school, the principal shall request that the police complete their interviews, conduct searches, effect arrests on other locations away from the school if possible. And then the second piece, the school shall make every attempt to notify the parent, guardian, caregiver and confirm whether they wish to attend. So
yeah,
I think, just confirming that parents are involved in the process.
Trustee Moss, you have your hand up then?
I do, thank you. And I saw that was on section 1 and 1.2 and 2.2. However, it says it in sort of an offhanded manner. I'm looking for a word. I can't think of what it is at the moment, but the policy says it's straight up front that that's it right up front. It says students are not to be interrogated by a police officer on school premises unless deemed to be absolutely necessary, blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, conducted only with the parent or guardian present. Whereas the admin regulation states it in an opposite manner. It's like, well, we'll do everything we can to get hold of them. So I'm not here to debate the admin reg. I'm only here to say that no, I do not want to see this policy repealed, because this is straight up speaking to parents, and they need to know this. And I actually remember circumstances where this was an issue in years gone by. So yeah.
So I'm just going to speak quickly to this motion, Trustee Westerby, before you speak, since you.
Point of privilege, Chair. I just feel like my question didn't get answered. I didn't want to interrupt, but
Yeah, sorry.
I didn't want to use my second question, but I just didn't feel like my first question got addressed at all.
I guess people didn't quite understand your question then. You were asking specifically if we'd done consultation, right, with equity seeking groups specifically?
Or even just our partner groups?
Not to my knowledge. Rachel Green, as we are doing this.
From my understanding, what occurred, the person who drafted the admin procedure worked with the RCMP for specific details, and then also put it out for feedback to our schools on how the process is currently practiced. But I don't believe there was any consultation with partner groups.
With the partner groups, correct.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna not say what I was gonna say then. I don't know quite how I'm feeling about the repeal of this one, given some of the points that have been raised by other people, but I would like to say that I think that we are repealing a lot of policies in favor of admin regulations, which I actually don't have a problem with and I think is good. but we are repealing policies based on the current admin regulations. But once things are in admin regulations, it doesn't have to come back to the board. And I'm wondering, actually, I was just thinking about it this morning as I was making notes and stuff on my package, if it wouldn't be a good idea to reopen our duties of the superintendent policy, to just put in there that the superintendent must inform the board if any changes are made to admin regulations, because I don't think any trustee is going to be, well, maybe one trustee might, but I don't think most trustees are reading the thing just for fun over and over and to check for changes. So I think that that it would be just a good idea that the board is alerted, because if we're repealing policies based on, oh, these admin procedures that were presented to us, and then suddenly the superintendent of the day sometime in the future changes those admin procedures, the board might not even be aware of that. So that's my thing about all of the repeals we've done, but that obviously could be at a future meeting. But I did think that when I was looking at this, I think that this policy, this proposed admin procedure is pretty good. I do hear Trustee Westerby's concerns though. So now that's giving me pause, but if it perhaps should be done in a bit of consultation. But the superintendent, I don't know if you're trying to address what I said, and then Trustee Swanky has his hand up.
Exactly what you brought up, and I think there are some questions and considerations regarding garnering feedback. We didn't consider that. We just connected with the RCMP. We're happy to take it back. We can always bring it back at another time. So that might be the better notion of having some authentic feedback from partner groups. It's my recommendation.
Would you, Trustee Swanky, can I just ask the superintendent if would you recommend that we just refer this now? Or would you like us to vote one way or the other? Trustee Swanky wants to speak, so I'm going to give him that opportunity.
Just really quickly, given some of the feedback around getting some feedback from partner groups, especially parents, because they interact, I think that might be beneficial for the board to consider that information as it comes back the next time.
Okay, Trustee Swanky, did you want to say something before I suggest that we do that?
If I may, and if it's in order at the conclusion of my comments, I'm even happy to move that referral. The piece I wanted to raise, I think, picks up on the comments of Trustee Westerby. There's been significant discussion about student vulnerability, especially due to considerations raised by the Office of the BC Human Rights Commissioner. And so I'm wondering, in reviewing the proposed administrative procedure, I found myself wondering how it balanced the interest of working with law enforcement with the interest of students, especially where there is maybe past trauma or where there may be intersectionality that complicates the perception of that interaction with the police. And so just sort of, I don't really know where that leads us, but I'm trying to reflect on what the considerations were raised by that office in light of where the proposed administrative procedure is leading us.
Trustee Swanky, you offered to do the motion to refer, but I am seeing that Trustee Reed has her hand up, so I'm going to go to her first, and then yes, Trustee Reed.
Listening to that feedback, I just think back to the district-wide event that we just had and discussion about how we can't always cast things through our own lens with our own experiences. So I would, I think support a motion to refer for that reason, even if we end up coming to the same conclusion, just to make sure we do our due diligence and our responsibility for reconciliation.
Thank you. Trustee Swanky, did you want to do the motion to refer?
Certainly, I'd move to refer this back to staff pending review.
Perfect. Thank you. Seconded by Trustee Bondar. Do you want to speak or should we just vote? Okay. All those in favor of referring this back to staff? Opposed? Okay, thank you. So that motion passes. The motion to refer passes. I am mindful of the time. Our board meeting bylaw says that we have 3 hours for a meeting. It is now 8:08 and we still need to do the public participation period and the superintendent's update. I don't want to not do those things. I also don't want to keep people here past their bedtimes when they're getting tired. So my suggestion is to refer the next 3 policies to the December meeting. The policy repeals, I mean, to the December meeting, because we are having these big discussions. I don't want to not do that if we need to. So I guess I will move to refer the repeal of policy 524, 704, and 716 to the December meeting. Seconded by trustee Bondar. So I'll just speak to that quickly. I believe we can get the other parts of the meeting done by 8:30. And so I think that if we do this, that'll allow us to get through the rest of the meeting and will help us make better decisions than if we try to rush this through. And I think we're getting tired, so I don't really want to do a motion to extend the meeting. So that's my logic for that. Does anyone want to speak against or for referral of those three policies? Okay, all those in favor that we refer the repeal of policy 524, 704, and 716 to the December meeting? Opposed? Trustee Prose, did you vote on referring those policies?
I forgot.
Okay.
So
Okay.
put me as sure.
Okay, so that was that motion carries. So and trustee Moz was opposed to referring those. So just to be clear when you're doing your notes. But so now we're moving on to meeting summaries, which are in
Chair, I did not oppose. I voted in favor.
Oh, sorry, your hand went up when I said opposed. So that's okay. Never mind. It was unanimous for referring. I thought I saw your hand at a different time. All right, great. Now we're moving on to meeting summaries. So those are in the package. Is now public participation, comments, or questions concerning the agenda. Okay. Okay, so Deirdre O'Connor from DPAC, but speaking as herself, she pointed out, just said re-changes to bylaw 5. Could you please expand on section 7 of the Human Rights Code portion? She Googled it, it was somewhat unclear. Also, there's a typo in the board email address. We did address that though, so we will fix that before it comes back. Secretary Treasurer, do you want to expand on section 7 of the Human Rights Code at all?
I wonder if we'll address that when we go through and make amendments to the policy, and then we can come back and explain it.
Okay. I think that was probably best. If you don't mind, we will do that, because I think we're not really prepared tonight to expand on it too much, but we will make sure we have better answers before we come back to discuss this in public again. Megan Reed, also from DPAC, said that it said one question per person. Simone said the opposite. We are going to address that. Many trustees raised that. So it sounds like we're in strong agreement that that would get changed. So I will have this on the agenda at a future meeting. Yes, and Megan Reed, once again, she said that the Secretary Treasurer said that they can ask as many questions as they want, but what was written was one question per person. So we will clarify that language before we discuss this again. Deirdre O'Connor again said committees of the whole are up to and including other stakeholders, not just trustees in other districts. Why would school district 33 be any different? I think we were just going on the language that had been used.
I can address that, and I did actually look at Robert's Rules of Meetings while we were sitting here. The committee of the whole refers to the committee of all members, and the members of the Board of Trustees are the trustees. So that's what the whole means.
Okay, thank you. Bylaw 5 has been updated twice already this year. Should we expect it to be changed quarterly? Fair question. You know, that's sort of a living document. We're trying to make it be very good and to apply to all the different scenarios that might come up, and we keep coming up with new things that we think aren't working quite well. So ideally, we'll get it to the point where it's so awesome that we never have to amend it again. That would be the dream. So yeah, not to make light of it, I do recognize that it's been amended a bunch. It's just things keep happening where we think, oh, actually this isn't working, or oh, we actually said this when we meant something else. So apologize for the dithering about in our bylaw, but we are trying to make it robust and good. Okay, then she says my Wi-Fi was slow last time and my comment didn't come through. How is that equitable and in line? Okay, so that's fair enough. We can think about that when we're also doing, if we go to a written thing, what we would do about you know, people not getting their questions in a timely manner and suddenly showing up in the middle of question period or whatever, we can think about that. And then last one from Deirdre is oftentimes, as seen tonight, questions pop up throughout the meeting and trustee conversations. Asking for a 30-minute buffer while it gives the board a heads up is a barrier for parent community volunteer participation. Would there be a consideration for stakeholders such as DPAC CTA to ask verbal questions in person? Good questions. We can't address both of those right now because the board hasn't had a chance to discuss this further. I also raised the 30-minute buffer thing. So I personally agree with you. We haven't had a chance to talk about that as a board yet. So we'll look at that for sure. Malcolm McPhee, doesn't say who that is, but someone who's watching our meeting, so I'm assuming a community member, is why is the secretary treasurer making comments or policy changes to public participation? Isn't their expertise in the monetary financial realm? So I can a little bit answer that. So secretary treasurers under the, I think it's under the School Act, are like, they are the parliamentarian as well as the treasurer of the district. So they are the person we consult when it comes to Robert's rules and that kind of thing. So that is why we're looking to her for her expertise as secretary treasurer. Did you want to add anything to that?
I would just say the secretary part of secretary treasurer is secretary to the board. So exactly what you said.
Yeah, I just for those of you who don't know, we actually can't have a meeting without our secretary treasurer present. Like if the secretary treasurer is not there, it doesn't count as an official meeting. It's a important part of the way boards function, just so you know. Okay. Daryl Ferguson, former trustee, says, let's see. Okay, according to policy 120.67, the board acts in the interest of all learners in the district, advocating for students, their learning, and their well-being, and the board's work with the community, the municipality, and the province. 7, the board promotes confidence in publicly funded education through its communications about the goals and achievements of the board. How does the board demonstrate this policy requirement to encourage public input when the chair has deliberately reduced access by requiring only written comments and/or questions? Some people do not have a computer and others will never get an answer to their question because the chair has sole discretion over what she can call an out-of-order question. Isn't the absurd claim that staff safety is now compromised just a straw man to allow this ideologically driven chair and board to further act in a totalitarian manner? Okay, so I will just say that this proposal was not proposed by me as the chair. It was recommended by the secretary treasurer. So yes, I have not deliberately reduced access by requiring only written comments. People do not have to have technology because it was in the proposed policy that they would be able to do a handwritten question if they come to the meeting. And this will be further debated at the next public meeting. Peter Lang asks, he wants to know what song was being hummed. I have no idea. So we'll move on to the next question. Katie Bartel from DPAC asks, can someone please explain why the committee of the whole does not include partner groups? Okay, so we just talked about that. We don't really have an official committee of the whole. I think that's maybe where the distinction is. Some districts do have an actual thing they call committee of the whole. That's a standing thing that includes members of the public, possible, or includes partner groups. This would be an ad hoc sort of just one-time thing. So we don't have a definition really of that in our district, but according to Robert's rules, it's what the secretary treasurer said. Okay, and then Katie Bartel also says DPAC would like to go on record with supporting the addition of written questions through a hybrid model to open access for the public, but vehemently suggests the board does not limit ways the public and specifically parents can engage with the board in person. Thank you. That is noted and will be taken into account when we're talking about this change. Okay, and Linda D'Armani says, changing how people interact with the board at the board meetings is just another way to mute people who want to have something to say. It's not in any way an enhancement. It's just another way to silence the public at board meetings. All right, noted. And Deirdre says, those were my comments from earlier, pointing out that due to being on camera, I've now, as a single mom, listened to the situation in my car at a dance studio parking lot, drove across Chilliwack on Bluetooth, and if I was driving, I could not have participated in the commentary. Home safe now, appreciates everyone's work and efforts this evening. Okay, thank you. Okay, so okay, that was, sorry, I was just trying to process that particular comment, but it was just a comment, so I don't need to answer it. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions on there. Thank you very much. Yeah, never mind. I was gonna say something, but I'm not going to. Just realized I was gonna just start talking randomly. Okay, so now we're on to superintendent's update. Just noting that we have 11 minutes left in our official meeting. Superintendent, if you need extra time, we can extend the meeting briefly to accommodate you, but carry on.
Thank you. It can be done in about 3 minutes.
Okay.
Let me just find my documentation. Just give me a second. Thank you. Great. I've got 2 quick updates for your consideration. I've already provided this via my weekend updates, but 2 key ones. The first one is, sorry, my apologies. The first one is the partnership with, so on September 1st with Squaw First Nations, we had a ceremony and we actually signed a partnership. It was an MOU for a new adult education program. So realistically, this is about creating opportunity for non-graduated adults in our community to be able to have the opportunity to achieve the Dogwood diploma. Also, while embracing the essential First Peoples principles of learning, which emphasizes the importance of patience and time in the learning process. This program is open to all students, and realistically, at the present moment, there are almost 90 adults that have signed up for this program. It's a partnership with a variety of places. It is a partnership with also with the Nicola Valley Institute of Technology and the College of Rockies by itself. You'll see in my update on the public website, there are some pictures there regarding the signing of the MOU. This is Chief Laura Muscle providing some opening comments at the ceremony by itself. Here's a big piece would be, first of all, I want to thank that this would not have happened if not for Dr. Kirk Savage and also with the whole notion of Principal Sean Wicker and also Chief Administrative Officer Diane Jansen. They talked for a couple of months. They removed all the barriers and processes, make sure that we were compliant with the ministry processes. And as I said, to this day, we have more than 90 students that are participating in this. And here's the most important piece. As a school district, we still have a long way to go to make sure we remove the disparity between Indigenous students graduating within 6 years and all students graduating within 6 years. This program, coupled with the SADA Secondary Continuing Education Program, it's a business education program. And again, I know Diane Jansen also was involved in that program when it was first co-created. This goes towards our commitment in the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act Action Plan, including Action 4.4, Equitable Access to Education, and 4.41, Upgrading Skills. And so these are a great addition to our school districts. We really appreciate this program. We'll be bringing regular updates as time ebbs by. So that's the first update. The second update, really quickly, is the SADA Secondary Farm. There was a secondary farm harvest on October 19th. Approximately 130 students, parents, and members from the community were out at the farm. They harvested almost 4,500 pounds of vegetables for the Salvation Army, Wilma's Transition House, Stolo Nation community. This was all part of the Salvation Army's inaugural Plant a Row for Us, a program where the community members plant produce in their own gardens and then donate it to the food bank throughout the summer. So the food for harvest on October 19th was brought to the Salvation Army to put on the shelves of the free store called the pantry. They used about 15,000 square feet of the existing plot at the SADA Secondary Farm. Collectively, SADA Secondary has handed over approximately 1,000 pounds of vegetables every week throughout the summer, which has been instrumental. I actually have really quickly on the screen, I'm not going to go over it. These are going to be 30. So the farmers actually donated almost 30,500 pounds of vegetables to the community so far. Tremendous amount. Honorable Pam Alexis, Minister of Agriculture, also attended the harvest, which is fantastic to see. These are all of the different products produced that they garner at the Sardis farm. But here's the most important part. These things don't come together unless we are passionate staff members that actually champion the cause. So realistically, I do want to recognize 2 passionate leaders and their dedication to the Sardis Secondary School and to the farm by itself. Teacher Tanya Toth and Joe Massey, who've given up lots of the time over the many, many years to make this Sardis farm a huge success. And we continue to hear great news from the Sardis farm. So thank you, trustees.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. And thank you, trustees. I know that was a big meeting, but we got it done within our allotted time frame. I know once in a while people say, well, that was a long meeting, but I just, it is a 3 hour that we have to do. So when we do these agendas, it's like to try to fit them within 3 hours. So I apologize when it goes right down to the wire, but we almost got everything that was on the agenda done. Not quite. We had to refer those 3 motions, but anyways, we did pretty good. So thank you for, I know, sticking it out. I know it's a bit tiring and better than when it went till 11:30 sometimes. But anyways, thank you all, everybody, for a great evening. And the next Board of Education meeting is on December 5th, 2023 at 5:30. And this meeting is adjourned. Have a great evening, everybody.